Throughout history, there have been people who have committed some of the most heinous crimes fathomable. For those crimes, they have been convicted and sentenced to death. Welcome to Death Row Executions, where we take a look into the lives of society's worst offenders. And now, your host, Air.
What do you do every day?
Well, every day is just a repeat of the last, you know. You do stuff, you try to pass the time, but it's not comfortable. You just press through.
Mark Asay was born in 1964 and was raised in Florida. At an early age, he developed racist views and became a white supremacist. Although he claimed once upon a time that white was right, he often dabbled in overdrinking and going to downtown areas known for having transvestite hookers and receiving sexual favors from transvestites that were minorities. One man by the name of Robert McDowell was a street worker who was known in town and by the community as Rene Torres. Mark knew Rene, met him on multiple occasions, and referred to him as Rene. One day, the two met, and Mark claimed that Rene stole money from him one time, and he promised the next time he ever saw Rene, he was going to beat him up. Mark ended up getting into trouble and was convicted of capital felony murder and released on parole. In 1987, now 23 years old, Mark continued to get in trouble and was unable to let go of his old ways. On July 17, 1987, Mark, his brother Robbie, and their friend Bubba went to a local bar to play pool and drink. All three had multiple beers, and when it hit midnight, the trio left to go to a different bar. They stayed at the second bar until they closed at 2 a.m. Robbie had plans of hooking up with a girl he had his eyes on at the bar, so Mark and Bubba drove around for a bit to give Robbie some space and time with the girl. When Mark and Bubba returned to the bar, they met up with Robbie, who told them the girl was not interested in doing anything with him. Bubba then suggested that all of them go to downtown to find prostitutes and he would pay for all of them. Robbie left in his truck and Mark and Bubba left in Mark's truck. Even though they were in Mark's car, Bubba was the designated driver. Robbie made it to downtown first, and when Bubba and Mark spotted Robbie, they noticed he was talking to a black man by the name of Robert Lee Booker. They called him a man, but Robert was a transvestite dressed up as a woman that night. Robbie was asking Robert about finding more prostitutes, and for some reason, Mark did not like the tone Robert had with his brother Robbie. Mark got out of his car and told Robbie not to take any crap from him. "You know you ain't got to take no crap from these." Robbie tried to reassure his brother that everything was fine, but Mark did not listen. Mark got in Robert's face, started screaming racial slurs at him, and pointing his finger in Robert's face. Robert told him to get his finger out of his face, and Mark responded by saying, He then pulled his gun from his back pocket and shot Robert multiple times. Robert ran off and hid under a porch, but immediately succumbed to his wounds and died. Robbie drove off and Bubba tried to drive off as well, but Mark jumped in the back of the truck. Bubba asked why he shot Robert, and Mark replied by saying, "Because you got to show a d***er who was boss." Bubba asked Mark if he thought Robert was dead, and Mark replied by saying, "No, I just scared the crap out of him." Not fazed at all that Mark had shot someone, the men continued their search in the hopes of finding a prostitute. After some time driving, Mark noticed Robert McDowell, not to be confused with Mark's first victim, Robert Lee Booker. Robert McDowell, a.k.a. Rene Torres. Mark told Bubba that he knew Rene and would give them favors. They pulled over and the men negotiated the price for Rene's services. Bubba then drove to the alley and Rene followed the truck on foot. Bubba and Mark stayed in the car, but Rene refused to get in the car with both of them in it, so Mark got out of the truck and agreed to be the lookout. When Rene was about to get into the truck, Mark pulled his arm and shot him 6 times. Mark quickly got back in the truck and told Bubba to drive off. Shots were heard and someone called 911. Shortly after Rene died, he was found in an alley by responding officers. Mark had no issues communicating with other people about who he shot and why. He told his friend Charlie Moore in front of Charlie's cousin Danny that him, his brother, and Bubba were out looking for hookers, and when he spotted Rene, he initially wanted to have sex before he shot him.
What can you tell me about the murder of Robert McDowell?
That just happened as I was having a meltdown, apparently. That's all I can say. And we were sociable. And he did take money from me one time. When I see him, I'm gonna kick his.
But you did shoot him?
I did shoot him.
How many times did you shoot him?
It's reported that he was shot 6 times.
Even though Bubba and Robbie did not go to authorities after witnessing 2 murders, Charlie and Danny did go to authorities after watching a television Crime Watch segment on Renee being killed. With the help of Charlie and Danny, Mark was arrested and indicted on 2 counts of murder. While awaiting trial, Mark was in jail and confided with his cellmate Thomas Gross. Mark told Thomas that he was charged for murdering 2 people. He also told Thomas that the people he killed were black and he quote-unquote shot those. Of course, Thomas was looking for a deal, so agreed to testify against his cellmate for the upcoming trial. When trial began, Thomas told the court that Mark showed him newspaper clippings of his crimes and showed off his white power tattoos. At the conclusion of Mark's trial, a jury found him guilty of murdering Robert McDowell and Robert Lee Booker. The reasons behind the jury recommending death were because, number 1, Mark was under sentence of imprisonment at the time of the murders and had been previously convicted of a capital felony. Secondly, they felt that Mark committed murder in a cold, calculated, and premeditated manner. Mark was officially sentenced to death on November 18, 1988. Mark was only 23 with such an extensive record, and his behavior was not getting better as he got older. I want to make a quick mention that Mark believed that both of his victims were black. Even in the first appeal documents, the courts referred to Robert McDowell as a black man, and in a second appeal, the court apologized for that error after finding out that Robert McDowell was of mixed race. He was half white and half Hispanic. There were appeals over the years, with one point being that Mark wanted the trial judge disqualified based off of some of the comments he made during trial. All of Mark's appeals were rejected, dismissed, or denied. On July 3, 2017, Governor Rick Scott signed Mark's execution warrant, which marked almost 30 years since he was sentenced.
You know, what kept me going was I believed that maybe someday this would be resolved in my favor.
You know, there's fear that if you were let out, you might do the same thing again.
Of course. I've witnessed it myself. I've seen people get out of prison and repeat the offense. There's no question about that. That fear comes true all too often. But by the same token, people treat that proposition as though they've never heard of a first-time offender. You know, there's people running around on the street now who have never been in trouble with the law, who are about to commit a violent crime. You see, so that argument, you know, is a bit specious, you know. But I do believe that people need to have some sort of rehabilitation. They need to be made to face the truth about how they behaved and how their behavior has impacted society. I never, ever in my life owned a gun until June 12th, 1987. And 35 days later, I shot somebody with it. You know, and all I'm saying is having it is the opportunity to use it, which is the opportunity to spend the rest of your life in prison because of it. So don't do it.
There were no final stays of execution, and for Mark's last meal, he had fried ham, fried pork chops, French fries, vanilla swirl ice cream, and cola. He refused to make a final statement before his execution, and he was pronounced dead at 6:22 p.m. Mark made history, and 2017 marked the year where the first white man was executed for killing a black man in the state of Florida. Thank you all for watching another episode of Death Row Executions. Mark reminds me of my story on Robert Van Hook, who tried to say he experienced a gay panic. He struggled with his sexuality and talked down on gays, but enjoyed them. Mark claimed to have hated black people and gays, but only looked for transvestite hookers who he thought were black.
He was just there that day and decided to come home and never made it.
You're now 69 years old.
I'm 69.
Still awaiting justice.
Still awaiting justice. Justice, I feel, will be served, but if it doesn't, then I know the justice system has failed us.
How does it make you feel to know that this man's life will be ended in 48 hours?
Oh, it makes, to tell you the truth, it relieves me a lot. It takes a lot of pressure off of me and off the family because we have been waiting all these years for this to happen.
Will you be there on Thursday?
I would love to, but I suffer myself and I wouldn't want to pass out there because I suffer from seizures. My sisters, some of them might be there.
You know, he continues to deny that he's the one who pulled the trigger. Do you believe that?
No, I don't. I don't, because he's the type of person that would take a life and not think twice about it. He has that mentality. So a person with that type of mentality, I think that should be put off the face of the earth.
If any, what words do you have for Mark?
All I have to say to him is, you know what you did, now it's your time. You can imagine how my brother felt.